Hello, my name is Tom Masano, and this video is about tiering to the public cloud with HCP version 8.1. In this instance, we're using Amazon S3. So first, I'm going to log into my AWS account and create an S3 bucket that the HCP can use. Then I'm going to create an S3 user. And that S3 user is going to give us some access keys. Now, we could use the access keys from root on the account that I log in, but that would give that user access to everything in my Amazon account, and I don't want to do that. I only want to give them access to my S3 bucket. Once we've created that, we're going to go into the HCP and create a Amazon S3 storage component, and then an Amazon S3 storage pool, create a service plan that would tier from possibly primary storage to the extended storage, and then assign that service plan to a tenant. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to log into my account. Then I'm going to go to storage and S3. And I'm going to create a bucket, and we're going to call this HCP1 dash bucket 1. And I'm going to pick the region closest to my HCP, and I'm going to say next. And I'm going to keep all these defaults pretty much the same. There is some advanced settings. I, again, want to keep all those the same. And the default settings here. So you can read this information about some of these if you like, but the defaults will work. And then create the bucket. So there it is, HCP bucket has been created. Now I'm going to create a user. I could use the access keys for the root user, but if I was to use the access keys of the root user, they would have access to all of these services within my AWS account. So really, I just want to create a single user that will only have access to S3. So there I go to IAM, and I'm going to go to users. So we're going to create a user. So we say add user, and I'm going to call this HCP user 1. And I'm just giving him programmatic access, meaning just access to the bucket itself and not to the management console. I also want to create a group so that I can assign specific permissions to him. And I'm going to call this S3 access. And if we scroll all the way down here, we'll find an Amazon S3 full access group. So it's in alphabetical order. Oh, I just passed it. Amazon S3 full access. We check that, and then we say create the group. So now my user that I'm creating has access to this group, and we say next. I'm not assigning any tags to this user. If you had multiple users, you might want to tag them so they're easier to find. And now is a review. So his name is HCP user 1, access with keys, and he's in group S3 access, and create the user. Now, once I create the user, this is really important. These are the access keys that I'm going to need. So I usually save these somewhere. Or you can download them as a CSV and it'll save them for you there. So we can say save. Actually, I'll open it so you can see what it looks like. And it's just, right? So here's what that brings. And the username, access key, and the secret access key is important. And we just close that. Okay, so now we have that information. So if you were to lose this and there's no way of getting it after this screen, or if you forgot where you downloaded it to, you'd have to generate a new key and assign it. So it's very important. All right, so now I've created the S3 bucket. and the user and a group, and I should be good to go at this point from my Amazon perspective. Now let's go to the HCP. Now from an HCP perspective, on the help of the HCP, if you wanted to get information on doing this, it's all documented in the help files. So you would go to administering an HCP, storage administration, and extended storage components. And then from here, you would see the Amazon S3 components, and it would give you step-by-step information on how to do this. Now, once I'm on my HCP, I go to storage, components, and right now I only have primary running. And so I will add a component, and I want it to be an Amazon S3. There are many choices here, so I'm just going to pick Amazon S3 and say go. And I'm just going to call this AWS S3. Now it's asking what network interface do you want it to go out over. I only have one, so I'm picking the HCP system. The endpoint I'm going to use is the default. As far as advanced, we can select always use the path style URLs. This helps us from a region perspective. It just makes the connection a little bit faster. If you didn't use path style URLs, it would use a default URL and then it would reroute you to US East or whatever one you want. But by creating path style, it doesn't do that. And we say next. Now the account label is actually going to be the user that we created. So if you recall, that was HCP user 1. I'm cutting and pasting from my Excel spreadsheet and my secret key. Now I'm not using any custom headers, but I just wanted to show you that here. And then I click next. So at this point, it's logged in. Those credentials are valid, it connected, and it's actually showing us the buckets that I have in my AWS account. So I'm going to pick the one that I created and click next. And now that storage component has been created and we have a summary of what it has here. Okay. And finish. There we go. So now we can see the AWS storage component that I created. And I like to think of this when I do this, working from the top down. So I'm creating a component. Now I'm going to create a pool. So I have to create a pool for that component. And I'm going to create a S3 component, Amazon S3. And I'm going to call this S3 pool. And I'm going to select this storage component. And I'm going to compress data at rest. This makes it a little bit faster when we're transferring large files up to the cloud if it's already compressed. And finish. So now I created the pool. Now that I have the pool, I have to create a service plan. And again, I'm going to go to service plans, create a service plan, and I'm going to call this Tier 2 AWS. I'm not going to import anything, so I'm just going to click next and finish. So now I see my storage pools and the ingest is on my primary running, which is my local storage on the HCP. I can't have it landing on ingest to the cloud. It has to land locally first and then we tier it off. So I'm going to add a tier and then I'm going to say after 30 days is when I want objects to tier. Now this is a AND logic here. So it would have to be days and percentage if you wanted it to. So you could do 30 days, 0%, or you could do 0 days and 90%, or you could do both. But if you did both, they would both have to be true before it tiered. Okay, so I'm just going to do 30 days. Enabling rehydration, it's going to, once it comes back, it's going to enable it to be rehydrated for however many days that you suggest here. And now it's giving me the option of, okay, what is the tier that you want to add? And we already have the primary running, so I'm going to add the S3. Now, it's asking how many copies of data do I want out there? I want 1 copy. And now it gives me the warning and says all data copies for this tier will be held in extended storage. This storage should be protected and secured and should have healthy monitored closely. And you have to click I understand. Because don't forget, the service level agreement at this point is at the Amazon base. So if Amazon loses this copy of this object, HCP cannot recover it. So here we are. After 30 days since ingest, we're going to tier it off. And we've successfully created the plan. And here's where you can get a feel for kind of what's going to happen, right? So on ingest, I'm going to keep 2 copies of data locally. This is actually a VM system, so the default is 2 copies of data and 2 copies of metadata. We always do that. Then after 30 days, it's going to go to the S3 pool, and we're going to have 1 copy of data in the S3 pool, and we're going to have 1 copy of the metadata on the HCP. It always has to be, the metadata always has to be on the HCP because this is how it's going to find the S3 pool once it has it. Now, as we go through some of these, we can say the tenants, currently there are no tenants associated with this, and we can look at the settings if we wanted to retire this, and we can also manage it. We can replace some service plans if we wanted to from here. So the next thing I would like to do is, rather than doing it from this tenant screen, I can assign the tenants here. I'd like to go to the actual tenant. So I'm going to go to tenants, and I'm going to pick a tenant here, discovery.old. I'm going to go to settings, and as we scroll down, we'll see the service plans. I'm going to tier to AWS and apply the service plan. So now that service plan is associated with that. Now if we go back to overview, we can see the summary page. Now storage tiering is a scheduled service, just so you're aware. So it's only going to tier during this schedule. Services and schedule. I get to see the entire schedule. I can make this a little bit easier to read and just change this to storage tiering. And now I can see just when the storage tiering is actually happening. So we can see this happening Sunday morning, and then in the afternoon, storage tiering, and also the priority of it. So we can see the tiering is at a medium level. Now, if we wanted to change this, we would have to create a new schedule. So if I click on this, it's going to tell me that I can't modify the default. I would have to create a new one. So we could create a new one if you wanted to. We could say create a new schedule. And I want to take the default one. So I could say I can give this a different one, tiering priority. And I'm copying from my default, save it. Okay, so now here's my tiering priority. Maybe before I activate it, I want to change some things on it. So let's look at storage tiering again. Now maybe I can change the schedule and also the priority of it. So I can make it high if I wanted to, and I could change the amount of time that I wanted it. So I could create a new period if I wanted to, or I could update it. So I just updated it, and I could do this for each one of these if I wanted to. So I created a high priority on Sunday, and maybe I'll make it a high priority on Saturday also. And then once I get everything the way that I want it, update the schedule, and then I can activate the schedule. I can go back to storage, and we can look at some of the things that are going on here. We can look at the service plan again, and then go to the tier 2 AWS, and this is actually showing us the rights for this. Now if we scroll to the bottom, you'll see it says the graphs do not include writes or reads from the primary storage. So this is going to be just about the tier to the cloud, right? And then we can review again what this was set up as, what we're doing here. I changed this to 3,650 days because I didn't want it tiering to my personal AWS cloud. And then we can look at tenants here, and we can see the discovery.old, any settings that we may have here. And we could also go back in and manage it and replace this with a different service plan. So I hope you found this helpful, and thank you for your time.